Right, welcome back to another web development video where I show you how to make modern websites using HTML5, CSS3, and a little bit of JavaScript. In a previous video, I had gone over some basic or simple API pagination, and it looks something like this, where we had a simple button, and when you click the button, then it loads in the next set of articles from the object, from the API call, which is here, right? So we start with a page 1, and then each time we click the button, we increment that page by 1. So page 1 becomes 2, and page 2 becomes 3, etc. And then we run the function again, this function here, to get the data, and then it loads that data back into our grid. It actually appends it, which means that it creates sort of a rolling grid. You can see it in action here. So we load in our first initial 6, and then each time we click, we're adding 6 more images. So you can see how that works. Alright, I wanted to show a couple of different strategies to do something more advanced. 2 of the strategies that I could think of. One is a scroll, so you load more as you scroll down the page. So like when you get here, it begins to load it in. That's called lazy loading. And the other is to use a simple button navigation system. So not just one button to load them, but more of a paged sort of navigation where you can click next and you'll get the next 6 images or however many you want to bring in, and then you click previous, and then it'll open, it'll sort of take off the ones you were just on, and then it'll show you the previous 6 images in the data set. So that's something that we can talk through together. I've already created the styles for the navigation here, so you can see those. You can stop the video if you want and apply those as well. Here is the here's the navigation here. So when you click next and you go to page 2, it'll actually show both buttons, the previous and the next button. That is all handled in the JavaScript. And then our scroll trigger here is just something that loads in after, at the end of the page, sort of down here. It loads in, and then when this gets to a particular offset from the top of the page, then it triggers an event. You could have done this at the end of this dynamic, like the last item. I find that doing it this way worked a lot easier and a lot better for me to be able to get the results that I want. So let's just go ahead and we'll do the OnScroll first, and then we'll come back to the other. So we have our initial 6 images here, and it looks like nothing is down here because this is just sort of an empty div. But if we look in the code, we can see let's see if it shows up. Yeah, so you can see right here our scroll trigger does show up as an empty div, and it's just sort of there. You can't really see it. It's just at the bottom of this grid. So that's looking exactly like we want it to look, and that's perfect. We got rid of our load button. We're gonna have to make this responsive, just so when we get to a particular part of the page we can scroll down. If you want to change that based on the viewport width, you can do that. Let's see, I don't have any other. I did a few things here with the ObjectFit just to make sure our grid items were the same size. So if ObjectFit is a little bit of a different property for you, you should look that up. And we put that right on the image. So each image has a particular height. And then when we say ObjectFit, then it works a lot like a background image. So it just sort of crops the image so that they all are at the same height. At this, for us, it's a maximum height of 200 pixels. So they all sort of keep the same proportions, and then they're all 100% wide. So it just sort of keeps a nice even grid as we look at it. All right, let's get down to the JavaScript. So our JavaScript here, this is our original function. If you watch the simple API Pagination video, or you can look at it in Codepen, you'll see that this is the only function that we have that we're working with. This function here is going to be for when we do our paged navigation. It's a little bit different. So this is it. This is our call to Unsplash. We have 6 images per page, and then we have a page element here, a variable, and that variable is initially set to 1. So our initial page variable is going to be 1. And when we have clicked the load more button, we increment that page variable by 1, so 1 goes to 2 and 2 goes to 3, etc. every time you click it, and then we just run our function again, but we run it this time with the variable page equals 2, so you're getting the second page of results, and then you run it again and it's page 3, and you run it again and it's page 4, etc. So that's how we were doing sort of the very, very basic simple load button. Let's take that off there, and we have our scroll trigger, right? And let's take a look at this scroll trigger function. So whenever the window is scrolled, then we're going to run this anonymous function. So that's all this says, this function right here. So when the window is scrolled, then run whatever this code is. And in this code, we're getting the scroll top, which is the top of the window. So as it's scrolled, the scroll top is changing. And then for this one, the element top, the element that we want to track is the scroll trigger. And to get the top of where the scroll trigger is whenever you're scrolling, you do the element dot offset dot top. So this gives you an object back here. So scroll trigger dot offset gives you an object, and inside that object or that array is a value for top. So you can get top or the left, or there are multiple different values that you can grab out of that object that's brought back to you out of that array. And we just want to know what the top is of this scroll trigger when the window is scrolled. Now, in order to get the top as it's moving, we need to subtract the element top from the scroll top, and that'll give us the position on the page of this element as the page is being scrolled. So if that scroll top is less than 1000, so we can look and see. We can actually look and see where that is. Actually, let's just do that for all of them, and then we can see how we got all of those values, right? So scroll top and element. So we're going to have 3 values. Let's take a look at our console here. Okay, so this is our total data set, and as soon as I start scrolling, it's going to start popping numbers in here. So the first number is the scroll top, so the window scroll top. The second number is the element offset, and the third number is the calculated top of the element. So you can see here this number is changing this number is not, because that's just getting where is that element on the page. So where is the scroll trigger located on the page? It's at 1296 pixels from the top of the window. I mean of the viewport, not the window. And then as I move it, this bottom number represents, as it moves up, the distance between the top and the initial position of the element is shrinking. You can see that. So 1293, 92, 91, and we just keep going, and you just keep seeing it shrinking. Well, let's try that again, because our function kicked in. So let's just take that off. So we don't want this to happen yet. We just are trying to figure out how this all works. Okay. So when we scroll to the top, we have our data set. So let's try this again. And as we scroll, so the initial, it's initially at 1, the top of the window as we scroll. And then our element is at 1296 pixels. So our element is in effect, because this is not 0. This isn't 0, it's 1. So our element in effect is at position 1295. So that's 1295 pixels down the page. So as we scroll, you can see that the top is moving this way, the element is moving this way, and where the element is now is represented here. So it's the element minus the top gives us the current position, you could say at the current position, of the element itself. So it reconfigures itself as we move up and down. And the final position, if we scroll all the way down the page, is 682, 636. So at the, 615. So I'm scrolled all the way down as far as I can possibly go, and the very bottom, which is where our div is located, is at 615. So that is the magic number that we're looking for. So we can, it needs to be at least 615. So if we were scrolling and we got to 615, bam, it would load in new content. And then if we scroll all the way back down again and it got to 615, bam, we would be loading in new content. Okay, so that's our magic number that we're playing with. And then we have our actual our action here. So when the window is scrolled, we take all these measurements about the page, and so we can find out where is the scroll trigger on the page. And then we say if the scrolled top, so if the calculated part of where, if the bottom number, in essence, if this number here, if it is less than 1000, then we're going to do something, which is we're going to increment the page. So go to page number 2, and then we're going to run through and get our data set. And getting our data set also means that we're going to output it to the grid. Okay. Now we can try our magic number, which was 615. So if it's less than, actually let's do 616, so that includes 615. So if it's less than 616 pixels, this calculated top of our element as we scroll down. If it's less than 616 pixels from the top, then execute this function. So let's try it out. think it's already done it. So let's just scroll to the top, because when you refresh a page, it keeps you wherever you are on the page. So let's just start totally fresh. So we can see here there's no calculation, right? And then we're going to scroll down, and you can see that we got into 615 and then we hit more images. Yeah, I'm not sure why that wasn't working. But when you scroll down and you hit 615, it should just keep loading in more images. And so you have sort of a lazy loading type of system. And maybe we've... Oh. I don't like the 615 because I feel like it's cutting it too close. You can see that sometimes when you get to the bottom, that it's not loading things in. So what I want to do is I want to make this number a little bit larger. So not waiting until the very bottom of the page hits, but waiting until, let's say, 900. So that's 300 more pixels of padding essentially that you're sort of giving it. So you're not going to see the end of the initial call. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have our initial 6. But before you get down, before you even get past this one, it's already loaded in the next ones. So we can see it here as well. We're far down the page. Let me get us to the top. So as we scroll down, we have our image here. This is the last image. And by the time we get to the end of this, it will have already loaded in more images. It took a minute to do that. Maybe because I'm recording. But as you can see, we don't wind up getting to the bottom of the page, and then there's no loading in of the images. It just sort of is always continuously loading the images into the page. So you never sort of run into that gap, and you just have to find what's the right number for you here. Is the offset 1000 from where the scroll trigger is to the top of the page, or is it something else? So that's on mobile. If you go out to desktop, you're going to have the same sort of situation. So it's just going to keep loading in images as you scroll down the page, and you just sort of get into this place where it's always loading in new content. But the user could stop right here. There's a lot more elements that could be brought into the page, but if the user stops right here, then it doesn't continue to load a bunch of data. So all these are images that are being loaded into the page. If you're on a data plan, but you're not on Wi-Fi and people are counting how much you download, then that's a big problem if you just bombard them with 1,700 photographs. Not to mention it's going to take forever to load. So giving people a lazy load option is a really good way to keep the content going and also give the user control. So I can stop now and I don't have to load all the rest of the images to the bottom of the page. So, and then, you know, user can scroll back through all of the images as well. So that is advanced load on scroll, sort of a lazy load type of situation. Very helpful if you have a feed or if you have something where you want people to just be really engaged. So let's get rid of that, and we will just hide this trigger, and we'll open up our navigation. So this is the second sort of advanced thing that we're going to do. And you can see down here that we have our navigation. For some reason, is it taking our styles? For some reason it's not taking our styles very well. I think it has to do with our grid. So let's say 0, auto, and 3 rem. There we go. I had the margin on this grid as auto, so 3 rem is too much, so let's just do it like that. So we have a margin now on the bottom of this grid of 2 rem, which is 32 pixels, which gives us some space between our navigation and the grid itself. So here is our code. Pretty easy. It's just a click event, similar to what we were doing with our load more button. We're just going to do it for each of the different elements, the previous and the next navigation. Now, when we click next, we want it to go to page 2. So this is going to be sort of the behavior that we've been dealing with so far, which is we take our page and we make it 2. And if it's on page 2, then we make it 3 and 4, etc. But to go back a page, we need to decrement. So we need to make it less by 1. And the way that we do that is page minus minus. So page plus plus makes it an extra, makes it the next number up. Page minus minus makes it the next page down. And then we're running a separate function called get page data. Now the reason I did this is because I wanted it to have more of a paged feel. So let me show you what it would look like. If we just do get data. So we'll just hide these. So if we just use the same function that we were using before, we load in our initial ones. Okay, we have our little next button over here. Yeah, it's fun. We have our next button over here, and when we click on it, what it's going to do is it's going to append to the bottom of this. So you can see there that what we're doing is similar to what we were doing before. So if that's what the action that you want, you don't have to do anything extra. But normally when I say a paged next and previous, that means I'm getting a page view. So it's like I'm moving to another page. So you could do that in the URL, but we're doing this as just sort of like a single page application or just a little widget on a page or something. So what we want to do is we want to run this other function called get paged data. And the difference between them is this right here. So it's essentially the same function. It's just that we're doing a different thing here, and what this does is when it runs through the function to get the data and then to output the data here, what it does is it takes the grid and it clears it out. We make it nothing. And then now when the grid is nothing, then we can fill it in with only the things that we called, which are 6 images. In fact, we could make that 9 to sort of fill up the page a little bit more. And so now when we click on it, it'll clear out our grid. It'll run through each of our images, get the get the variables and the values, I'm sorry. Get the values that we need, put them into the right variables, and then we can output that information in the HTML in the grid. And it'll be like a page sort of thing. And then each time that we click on one of these, the page is going up. And so we're essentially going to page 2, page 3, page 4, and then going back to page 3, page 2, page 1. And then I'll take this off, and then I'll show you why I put that in there. It's more of a usability thing. So let's just refresh our page. So we have what we had before, and when we click next, you can see that the original 6 images go away, and the new 6 images are loaded into the page, right? But you can see there's a problem here. We need our previous button, and I have actually I've hidden it somewhere. Let's see. Yeah, I feel like I've hidden it somewhere. But the reason that I put this in here is if the page is greater than 1, so if our page variable is greater than 1, then we need to show the previous button. But if it's less than 1, then we don't need to show. So we need to hide it. But what we do need to do is, okay, so you can see it here. It's just not showing up on the other for some reason. But you can see it here. This is page 2 because I've clicked the next button. This is page 3. And then if we go back, that's page 2. And then this is page 1. But on page 1 we don't need a previous button because there is no previous page. So we put this little conditional statement in here that says if it's page 1, then we don't need to see the previous button. Otherwise, you can do this. And if you wanted to go one step farther and you think that someone will actually make it to the end of your photos list or all the data in your object, then you could even do another conditional that says if paged is greater than 1, then do this. And then do another conditional that says if page is equal to, and then you can go through and capture here. You can capture how many pages are in the collection total. So let me show you. So if we come and look at our data object, you can see that it has something called total pages. And if we if we capture this number here, this value, then total pages is something that we can compare. So if we say variable total pages equals data dot total pages, we can check that with a console log. So we do it like this. Then when we come back and we refresh, we should have the number 1996 logged in. Oh, let's see. Oh, it only happens when we do our page data. So let's click the button. So we click the button, and then we see that the total pages for this data set is 1996 total pages. So then you can say if total If page is equal to total pages, then what do we want to do? We want to take not previous, but next, and we want to set its visibility to hidden, and then we'll come down and do an else. Else, if it's not equal, then we'll set next to visible. Okay, so we should see it on our first page. And then if we run our get page data and we do page 1996, so if we do our last page, oh, that's not right, is it? Per page, let's get back. I did the wrong thing. So we make our page 1996. This should show us our last page. And then let's see if is it going to work. Let's see if this works. So far it's not. Where did we mess up? Maybe we need to make these global. So let's say of our total pages, we'll just make we'll make a variable for that, and then in here we set total pages to equal this, and then when we come out the other side, we can put this outside of that function. I think we're getting tripped up somewhere. No, that's not it either. Well, clearly this is why I did not do that. So if page is equal to total pages, then we'll set the visibility to hidden. Else, next, visibility should be visible. See if that sets it right. No. Total pages. Total pages. I think what's happening here is I'm bypassing by setting this here instead of clicking through. I'm bypassing the total pages. So you have to click through to 1996 just to let you know. So this should work. And it just won't work if you don't have total pages listed. So yeah, I don't really know the way around that, other than because each time I click the button, it's going to run this function, and it runs this function, and this function is always looking for total pages after it's run. So it looks in the data set each time, and it's looking for total pages. So if you click it 1996 times, when you get to the last page, it should check this, and it should say 1996, that's the value. And then this is saying if page is equal to total pages, then don't show the next button. So we're going to put that back up here. That was where I originally had it. And we'll just set it like that. But we haven't actually clicked through, so it's not showing the right thing, if that makes sense. So hopefully that makes sense to you. That's why I didn't do that. I just wanted to show you sort of the basic way. But there is a way to hide it at the end just as well as the beginning. Okay. Alright, so hopefully that was pretty clear to you. I'm going to leave all this stuff up here. So I'm just going to sort of comment out these other parts, and I'll just leave the load more button. And I'm just going to comment out the JavaScript here. And if you want to look at this and take a look at it or fork it and try to make it better, feel free to do that. I do know that these work. They draw a lot of they don't put the impetus on the user, they put the impetus on the server side, making the calls over and over again. So again, not the most streamlined way that you could do it, but the way that we're going to do it now, because you're working with a very large data set and you don't want to just bombard the user with hundreds or thousands of images. You just want to hit them with a little bit at a time, like a trickle, like just a little bit. If you want to switch how many images are shown per page, it's right here. So you can actually just change this number to whatever you want it to be. I would suggest using it with this grid. This grid is 3 across as you get big. It's 2 across on a tablet size, and then it's just 1 as you get to small size. So you want to work in increments, things that are divisible by 2 and 3. Or you can work with the grid itself at different breakpoints in the CSS. So you can go up to the grid, and here's where the grid is. So at the different breakpoints, you can massage these. If you want to show 10 at a time, then you're going to have to change this to like a 5, something that 10 is divisible by. So just to let you know. Alright, well, thanks for watching. Hopefully there aren't too many questions. Hopefully it was pretty clear and understandable. If it's not, then you can leave questions or comments down in the comment section below. I love when there are comments or people who want to go farther, or if you just don't quite understand what I was saying about something, feel free to reach out and say something. I will answer it usually as quickly as I can, within hours or a day. If I don't have the answer, then I'll try to make another pin which shows you what I'm talking about. If it's a little bit too complex or something, to just type it out. Alright, make sure you subscribe. I have other API videos that you can watch if you want to learn the basics of how to set up an API with jQuery and how to do some more advanced things. And if you want to watch the video on how to set up this sort of lazy load button, then feel free to go back and watch that. It's more in depth than what I've shown you here, but essentially the same concepts, just not attached to a scroll. And it's sort of a blend of the two things that I showed you in this video. Alright, give the video a thumbs up if you like it. That helps a lot. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.